Welcome everyone, this is On Just Restart, and this time we're going to be talking about a possible January Nintendo Direct. Now, I'm not going to assume there's going to be a January Nintendo Direct. Typically, in the beginning of the year, usually get them in February. There are some exceptions, sometimes we've seen them in March, but typically we get a February Nintendo Direct. The only times we've gone like an early year presentation in January have been in 2017, a couple months before the release of the Switch, to give us a whole-on presentation, and that wasn't called the Direct, it was just a whole-on live stream presentation in an actual theater with an audience. And then in 2018, we got a Nintendo Direct Mini. Not a full-scale Direct, the Direct Mini sort of tided things over until March when we got a proper Nintendo Direct then. But otherwise, we haven't gotten any sort of major presentations in January from Nintendo. So why all of a sudden are we going to now start talking about there maybe being a January Direct? Well, there's a few things going on right now that are leading people to think that maybe something big is right around the corner. So honestly, there's a few different angles here. So, for starters, let's talk about The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. This game is coming May 12th, and the common complaint, the common conversation we have is that we just don't know that much about Tears of the Kingdom. Nintendo has been really quiet about this game. But you want to know who has been quiet about this game? Everyone else. It seems like it's starting to tear up the seams here. There's so much information, there's so much ready to go for a full-on marketing campaign for Tears of the Kingdom. The only party that's holding things back here is Nintendo themselves. We already have official word of localization. We're seeing different things pop up, like we saw an ad pop up for Nintendo Switch Online functionality in Tears of the Kingdom. There's rumors left and right, some of which we're debating if they're real or potentially marketing or merchandising. We're not entirely sure. And then there's this whole potential leak for the Zelda OLED, and we've been debating that as well. On the podcast, we put a poll for that, and it was 50-50, so people aren't sure if it's real or not, but it might be real. A lot of people are pretty convinced, and if it is truly real, then perhaps an announcement for this OLED is coming right around the corner. So it seems like Nintendo is so close to giving us the information for Tears of the Kingdom, and there's so much to talk about, and May 12th is not that far away. Maybe they want to start the huge marketing campaign for Tears of the Kingdom in January and not February, just to give them a little bit more time, a little bit more flexibility. That's one angle to this debate, but it goes a little bit beyond that. So, Fire Emblem Engage comes out January 20th, and I think most people are assuming, which I would say is a pretty reasonable assumption, that Nintendo's going to focus on Fire Emblem, and maybe they may make some mention to Mario movie at some point, but it's mostly probably going to be about Fire Emblem, and then once the game comes out, then it becomes a little bit more reasonable for Nintendo to market other projects. Typically, we've seen Nintendo kind of handle things this way. They may focus most of their marketing on one particular game, and then once that game comes out, they'll pick it up for something else. This could be the case again. We may not get much from Nintendo beyond just stuff for Fire Emblem Engage until it comes out on the 20th, but it isn't like Nintendo only talks about one game at a time. They are talking about several games, marketing several games at a time. It's just usually there's a focus for one or the other. And right after Fire Emblem Engage, there are other things beyond that that they're going to need to talk about too. For example, there's Bayonetta Origins, there's Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe, and there may be more that needs to be announced. Bayonetta Origins may not be a satisfactory amount of software to push the end of the fiscal year, and then April's entirely vacant, and then we get Tears of the Kingdom. So there's a little bit of a gap there. Maybe Nintendo wants to announce potentially something else, and maybe that shows up in a Nintendo Direct. Not to mention, we still don't know anything about June or beyond. So a lot of these things could be answered with a February Direct, but if we're to have any other substantial releases before Tears of the Kingdom, then it probably need to be announced pretty early, and a January Direct would fit that, potentially. And January 20th, yes, as that's when Engage comes out, and while I think there's definitely a lot of credence to the idea that we'll have to wait until after Engage comes out the 20th. There could be a Direct 1 week later, and it would still be January. So conceivably, we still could see a January Direct 1 week after Fire Emblem Engage. But let's now go back to what I was alluding to about there being a little bit of a vacancy before Tears of the Kingdom. So depending on what Nintendo wants to come out around this time, it may make more sense to announce it a little bit earlier in January as opposed to February, because they may want just a little bit more time to market it. Just a few more weeks may make that much of a difference. And the game I'm going to bring up is Metroid Prime Remaster. Now, maybe this doesn't even come out then, maybe it comes out in the midsummer, but they still want to have a little bit more time to market this game. And I'm bringing this game up because there's been a rumor that's come up recently where we had a moderator on Reddit who had been getting these messages over time, the last year or so, from somebody who's since deleted their account, where they've been teasing different announcements at Directs. Games like Skyward Sword, WarioWare, Splatoon 3 were teased beforehand, shortly beforehand, and they were true. Those announcements were in the Direct. Even for Tears of the Kingdom, the title itself was teased one day before the title was fully revealed. And then recently, this leaker, potentially, sent a message, and the message said, "Do you think everyone is primed and ready?" Considering the history of the illusions that are just play on words for the next big announcement, this is likely hinting at Prime. And there is a belief, by many, myself included, that we're going to get news on something Metroid this year. I think that's maybe a Metroid Prime Remaster, and it may make sense to announce this sooner than later. There has been speculation that it may be really close to getting announced because Jeff Grubb thought it'd be announced for the holiday, and while he may have been wrong in the timing, it might just be just a little bit later. And with this person who has this history of leaking and teasing things shortly before they're announced, this would imply that potentially an announcement could happen in January. Now, it's possible maybe they just announced Metroid Prime Remaster on its own with some sort of trailer on social media. Maybe it comes out April, or maybe it's coming out later in the summer or something like that. But it's also possible it's one of several announcements that are going to show up in an earlier Nintendo Direct. If Nintendo really wants to focus on marketing Tears of the Kingdom sooner than later, then they may be considering a January Direct. If they don't want all these different things to leak out, as we're starting to maybe see, then they may want to talk about that. If there are other announcements like a Metroid Prime Remaster that's being rumored, maybe that's going to show up there as well. But there's one more angle I want to sort of bring up here that could potentially suggest a January Direct. Now, I've mentioned the Tears of the Kingdom OLED leak, and part of the debate here is because I think some people don't want this leak to be real, because if it's real, it means that Tears of the Kingdom won't be launching alongside a more powerful system. Regardless of what happens, I think something is launching alongside the Switch. Even if this OLED leak is fake, there's a really good chance it may just be another OLED that perhaps has an even better design, or it just looks a little bit better because of the more finalized look at this leak, or maybe it is new hardware, even though as time progresses, that's seeming less and less likely. Point is, though, we are approaching the next generation, and if it's coming out, say, at the end of 2023, maybe Nintendo wants to space things out a little bit differently than they usually do, and they want to give themselves a little bit more breathing room with some of their announcements, so they'll have it directed in January as opposed to February like previous years, because this year is supposed to be a big year with the Mario movie, potentially new hardware, Tears of the Kingdom, maybe a brand new Mario game. There's a lot of things that could be really big, and they may need to space things out just a little bit more. Maybe. And that's why people are speculating that maybe we see a January Nintendo Direct this time around. It hasn't happened before, not in the sense of a general Direct, but if this is the year where there is new hardware coming, then I think there's a chance. Even if that hardware isn't showing up in the Direct, they could maybe start to show things off sooner so they can have more time to reveal other bigger things later on. Or maybe it could be as simple as, hey, it's about time to start talking about Tears of the Kingdom. Sure, they could wait till February, but maybe they want to have a few more weeks to market and campaign this massive Zelda game. But what do you guys think? Do you guys think that maybe Nintendo does want to space things out a little bit differently because they have so much more to talk about this year? Could it all just have to do with really hyping up Tears of the Kingdom a little bit earlier because we've been waiting for so long and now things are starting to leak out and they don't want that to happen? Or maybe it's just going to be February as it usually has been, and it's still going to be fine in terms of marketing Tears of the Kingdom and whatever else they have planned for the rest of the year. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Anyways, everyone, this is On Just Restart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.